Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
Carly Corinthos has always trusted her instincts, and when something doesn't feel right, she refuses to back down until she uncovers the truth. For weeks, Port Charles has been buzzing with questions about ADA Justine, the sharp and relentless prosecutor who seemed unusually fixated on Sonny Corinthos and anyone connected to him. Justine carried herself with an air of authority, confidence, and mystery, but beneath her calm and professional exterior, there were cracks forming. Carly, who has faced more enemies than she can count, began to pick up on subtle clues that hinted Justine was hiding something monumental. At first, Carly thought it was simply about ambition or maybe a vendetta against Sonny tied to his mob empire, but soon the signs pointed to a far deeper, more personal connection that left Carly both shocked and determined to expose. The first hint came when Carly overheard Justine on the phone late one night at the Metro Court. Carly wasn't intentionally eavesdropping, at least not at first, but she happened to catch a fragment of Justine's words that sent her instincts into overdrive. Justine's tone was sharp, her words urgent, and though Carly couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, she caught Justine saying, "He'll never see it coming. He won't know who I really am until it's too late." Carly froze at that moment, her gut tightening with unease. She knew enough about secrets and betrayals to realize that whatever Justine was hiding could spell disaster for Sonny and everyone in their orbit. While Carly didn't have proof, she knew better than to dismiss something so suspicious, and that phone call planted a seed of doubt that quickly grew into a burning need for answers. As the days passed, Carly began watching Justine more closely, paying attention to every move and every interaction she had in Port Charles. Justine was relentless in the courtroom, especially when it came to cases involving Sonny's associates, often pushing harder than seemed necessary or personal. She grilled witnesses with icy precision, her eyes flashing with something more than simple determination. Carly had seen that look before, it was the look of someone driven by vengeance. But what was the connection? Why would this ambitious ADA risk her reputation and career to go after Sonny in such a personal way? Carly replayed everything in her mind, searching for the missing puzzle piece that could explain Justine's obsession. Then, a chance encounter with Diane Miller, Sonny's trusted attorney, gave Carly the opening she needed. Diane casually mentioned that Justine had transferred into Port Charles from another jurisdiction rather quickly, bypassing the usual red tape. That piece of information sparked Carly's curiosity even more. People didn't just waltz into positions of power without a reason, or without help. Carly, being resourceful and determined, decided to dig deeper on her own. She pulled a few strings at the Metro Court, using her charm and influence to gather small pieces of intel from guests who might have crossed paths with Justine before her arrival in Port Charles. One business traveler mentioned hearing her name in connection with a high-profile case years ago, but the details were murky. Another hinted that Justine didn't always go by that name, though he couldn't quite recall what her previous identity had been. Carly's heart raced at that revelation. If Justine wasn't who she claimed to be, then everything about her role as ADA, and her motives against Sonny, suddenly made sense. Carly knew she was on the verge of uncovering a bombshell secret, but she also knew she had to tread carefully. If she went in too fast without proof, Justine could turn the tables on her, and that was a risk Carly couldn't afford. The breakthrough came when Carly decided to do what she does best, confront someone head-on. She engineered a situation at the Metro Court where she accidentally ran into Justine outside the restaurant. With her trademark poise, Carly struck up a conversation, pretending to be friendly and curious. She asked seemingly innocent questions about Justine's past, where she grew up, how she decided on law as a career. But as Carly pressed subtly, she noticed the way Justine's expression tightened, how her answers seemed rehearsed, as though she'd told the story so many times it had become second nature. That was all Carly needed to confirm that Justine was hiding something. The tension in that exchange left Carly more determined than ever to rip away the mask Justine was wearing. Later that night, unable to let it go, Carly searched through old public records, using contacts she had from her days dealing with media connections and investigative reporters. Hours turned into nearly an all-nighter, but finally, Carly found something that made her blood run cold. There was indeed a record of a woman who looked strikingly similar to Justine but under a completely different name. The woman had been connected to a tragic case years earlier, one involving organized crime, betrayal, and loss. Carly's heart pounded as she pieced the timeline together. Could it be that Justine was connected to someone Sonny had crossed paths with in the past? Was she the daughter of an enemy, a long-lost relative of someone who died because of Sonny's business? The revelation was almost too big to process, but it explained everything: her obsession, her cold determination, her personal vendetta masquerading as justice. Carly knew she couldn't sit on this information for long. The stakes were too high, and Sonny needed to know what kind of danger he was truly facing. But she also knew that telling Sonny would ignite his fury in a way that could spiral out of control. He was already under pressure from multiple angles, and dropping this bombshell could push him into dangerous territory. Still, Carly's priority was always to protect her family and the people she cared about, no matter how complicated her relationship with Sonny might be. She rehearsed the conversation in her head, imagining Sonny's reaction when she told him Justine's real identity. She knew his anger would be volcanic, that he would see red the moment he realized he'd been targeted in such a personal way. And yet, Carly also knew there was no avoiding it. The truth had to come out, no matter the fallout. When Carly finally sat Sonny down and revealed what she had discovered, the eruption was immediate. Sonny's jaw clenched, his fists balled, and his eyes burned with fury. The idea that Ada Justine had wormed her way into Port Charles under false pretenses, all to come after him with a secret vendetta, was too much for him to stomach. Sonny prided himself on knowing his enemies, on always being one step ahead. But this felt like a betrayal on an entirely new level. He couldn't believe that he had let this woman into his orbit without realizing who she truly was. His anger was explosive, but beneath the rage was something even more dangerous: resolve. Sonny wasn't about to let Justine's deception go unanswered. Sonny stormed across the room after Carly told him, pacing like a caged lion as he tried to process the weight of what she had just uncovered. His mind raced back through the moments he had interacted with Ada Justine, the sharp glares in the courtroom, the way she seemed to know exactly which buttons to push, the relentless way she drilled into every possible weakness his legal team might have had. At first, he had brushed it off as nothing more than professional zeal, a prosecutor doing her job. But now that Carly had pulled the curtain back, Sonny saw every single one of those moments differently. It wasn't just about the law. It wasn't just about doing her duty. It was personal. And for Sonny, personal vendettas were something he didn't take lightly. Carly sat quietly at first, watching Sonny's reaction, giving him the space he needed to absorb the truth. She knew this was a landmine, but she had just placed something in front of him that could alter the course of his life in Port Charles. Still, she felt justified. He needed to know. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady but laced with caution. She explained the records she had uncovered, how Justine's real identity linked her back to someone from Sonny's past who had been destroyed because of mob ties. Carly didn't mince words, but she also knew to leave some room for Sonny to draw his own conclusions. When Sonny spun around to face her, his eyes were blazing, and his voice came out low and dangerous. "You're telling me," he said, each word deliberate, "that this woman, this ADA who's been gunning for me in court, isn't even who she says she is? That she's been hiding behind some fake name, playing some long game, waiting to take me down?" His tone was equal parts disbelief and rage. Carly met his gaze without flinching, knowing this was exactly what she had feared. Sonny's fury was like a storm gathering strength, and there would be no containing it. "Yes," Carly answered firmly. "She's not who she claims to be, Sonny. I don't know how far back this goes, but I do know one thing: she's here for you. Every move she's made, every case she's touched, it's all been building up to this. She's out for revenge, and she's not going to stop until she feels like she's won." The room seemed to vibrate with tension as Sonny absorbed her words. For Sonny, betrayal wasn't just business, it was personal in ways outsiders could never truly grasp. He had built his empire on trust, loyalty, and instincts, and to find out he had been blindsided like this cut deeper than any legal battle. Carly could see the war raging inside him, the part of him that wanted to protect his family and the part that wanted to unleash hell on anyone who dared come for him. Sonny slammed his fist against the table, the sound echoing through the room. "She thinks she can come after me like this? She thinks she can play games with me and not pay the price?" His voice grew louder, sharper, filled with fury. Carly reached out, her hand brushing against his arm in an attempt to calm him. "Sonny, listen to me. You can't just react. That's what she wants. She's setting you up, and if you go after her without thinking this through, you'll be playing right into her hands. Carly's words were urgent, desperate, because she knew Sonny's temper could make him reckless. But Sonny wasn't easily calmed. He pulled away, running a hand through his hair, trying to rein in the volcanic emotions surging through him. I should have seen it, Carly. I should have known. After everything I've been through, after all the enemies I've had, I let someone slip under my radar. That doesn't happen. Not to me. Not ever. His pride was wounded, and his fury fed on that wound. To Sonny, being outmaneuvered even for a short time was unacceptable. Carly stayed composed, though inside she felt just as rattled. Sonny, what matters now is that you know. We can figure out her next move. We can stop her before she takes this any further. But if you go off half-cocked, you're only going to make things worse. Her voice softened, carrying both reason and affection, though their complicated history always made moments like this delicate. Sonny looked at her, his eyes still burning, but he knew Carly wasn't wrong. She had always been his voice of reason when his temper threatened to consume him. Still, Sonny wasn't about to sit back and do nothing. If she's tied to someone from my past, he muttered, then she's got an agenda. And I need to know exactly what it is. I need to know who she really is, who she's working with, and how far she's willing to go. His mind shifted into strategy mode, the way it always did when he faced a threat. He would dig, he would investigate, and he would expose her before she had the chance to land a fatal blow against him or his family. Carly could see that familiar steel setting into his features. She knew that once Sonny decided on a course of action, there was no turning him back. Still, she tried to keep him focused. Then let's do it smart, Sonny. Let's use the people we trust. Diane can help us dig deeper. Britt can handle the background checks, find out who she's connected to, who she's been talking to. We can figure out every move she's made since the moment she got here. That way, when you finally confront her, you'll be armed with the truth. Sonny nodded slowly, acknowledging that Carly's plan made sense. But the fury in him was still bubbling, simmering just beneath the surface. He was a man used to action, not patience. And this situation cut deeper than most. It wasn't just about business. It wasn't about territory or money. It was about betrayal, and Sonny Corinthos did not forgive betrayal. Carly knew it too, and that terrified her, because while Sonny was determined to protect his empire and his family, there was always the risk that his need for vengeance would put them all in greater danger. As the night wore on, Sonny couldn't shake the images that haunted his mind. Justine in the courtroom, her eyes filled with cold precision. Justine at the Metro Court, acting like she belonged in Carly's world. Justine smiling faintly as though she knew she held all the cards. Each memory fanned the flames of his fury. Carly watched him silently, knowing she couldn't stop the storm, only brace herself for it. She also knew that the fallout was coming, and when it did, it would shake Port Charles to its core. Meanwhile, outside the Corinthos circle, Justine herself had no idea that Carly had uncovered the truth. She believed her mask was still intact, that she had everyone fooled. But she underestimated Carly's instincts and Sonny's resilience. And now, with Sonny furious and determined to fight back, the tables were about to turn in ways Justine never anticipated. The air in Kelly's diner was a familiar cocktail of frying oil, freshly brewed coffee, and the faint, briny scent of the harbor that permeated all of Port Charles. For Carly Spencer, it was the smell of home, of chaos, of 1,000 memories both beautiful and brutal. Today, it felt suffocating. She sat in a booth, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea she had no intention of drinking, her gaze fixed on the steady, rhythmic drizzle outside the window. The gray sky mirrored the turmoil in her mind, a low-pressure system of suspicion and dread that had been building for weeks. It had started with small things, little inconsistencies that, on their own, meant nothing. A look in Ada Carson's eyes that was a little too knowing when a case involved Sonny Corinthos. A piece of legal strategy that seemed to anticipate Sonny's moves with an almost prescient understanding. A turn of phrase that felt jarringly out of place for a woman who had supposedly built her career in a different state, with no prior connection to their perpetually drama-soaked town. Carly had spent a lifetime navigating liars and manipulators. She had a gut-deep radar for when someone was performing, and something about Justine Carson felt like a meticulously rehearsed one-woman show. Her initial attempts to voice her concerns to Sonny had been met with a wall of dismissive irritation. "She's a good lawyer, Carly. She's keeping me out of prison. That's all that matters," he'd grumbled, his focus on the myriad threats to his business, both legal and illegal. He saw Carson as a tool, a sharp and effective one, and he didn't care about the fine print as long as it worked in his favor. But Carly cared. She cared because Sonny, for all his power and ferocity, had a blind spot. He saw loyalty as a currency and often failed to recognize the counterfeits until it was too late. She cared because this woman was now intricately woven into the fabric of their lives, privy to their secrets, their strategies, their vulnerabilities. And so, driven by a protectiveness that was as much a part of her as her own heartbeat, Carly had started digging. It began with a simple internet search, which yielded the expected, polished professional profile. A graduate of a reputable but not Ivy League law school, a career spent primarily in the state attorney's office in a mid-sized city, a move to Port Charles for a new challenge. It was all perfectly plausible, perfectly boring. Too perfect. Carly's skepticism was a living thing, gnawing at her. She hired a discreet and expensive private investigator from out of town, someone with no connections to Port Charles who wouldn't be recognized. For weeks, there was nothing. The PI reported that Justine Carson's background checked out. There were records, yearbook photos, bar association memberships. It was airtight. Carly had almost convinced herself she was being paranoid, that the constant state of siege in their lives was making her see ghosts in every shadow. She was on the verge of calling off the investigation, of accepting that this was one battle her intuition had lost. Then, the call came. The PI's voice was crackly, distant, but laced with a new kind of energy. "I hit a wall on the education records. They're good, really good. But I started cross-referencing personal details. Social security number traces back to a different name. It's a deep dig, Mrs. Spencer. This isn't just a few doctored documents, this is a full-scale identity reconstruction." Carly's heart had hammered against her ribs. What name? The original SSN was issued to a Jennifer N. Smith. But that trail goes cold after college. It's a dead end. Whoever did this work is a professional. But there's a financial thread. A small, consistent withdrawal from an old account under the Smith name. It goes to a P.O. box in a town called Oak Haven, about 2 hours north of here. It's been active for over 20 years. Oak Haven. The name meant nothing to Carly. It wasn't on any map of their shared history. What's at the P.O. box? That's the thing. It's not for mail. It's for a storage unit. A small, climate-controlled place. Paid for annually, in cash, for decades. The payments started a few months after Jennifer Smith ostensibly vanished. A storage unit. A time capsule. A secret buried in a nondescript town far from prying eyes. Carly didn't hesitate. "Get me into that unit. Mrs. Spencer, that's highly illegal. I don't care. Name your price. Just get me in." 2 days later, a set of blurry, dark photographs arrived on a secure server. The PI had done his job. The unit was sparse, containing only a few boxes. The photos showed their contents: childhood mementos, a high school diploma for Jennifer Smith, and, most tellingly, a stack of letters and a single, framed photograph. The PI had focused on the picture. It was of 2 young women, arms slung around each other's shoulders, smiling brightly into the camera. One was a girl Carly didn't recognize, a younger, softer version of Jennifer Smith. The other was a face Carly knew, a face from a past she had tried to bury. It was a young, vibrant Reese Marshall. Reese Marshall. Sonny's college girlfriend. The one he had loved before the world of organized crime had fully claimed him. The one whose tragic death in a car accident had shattered him, a loss he still carried like a phantom limb. Carly's blood ran cold. What was Jennifer Smith's connection to Reese? The letters provided the answer. They were from Reese to Jennifer, filled with the effusive, dramatic prose of young adulthood. Talk of classes, of dreams, of a boy named Sonny. And then, in the final few letters, a shift. Reese's tone became anxious, then fearful. "I'm scared, Jenny. Sonny is in so deep with these people. His friend, Mike, he's not a friend, he's a shark. I think he's using Sonny. I tried to talk to Sonny, to make him see, but he won't listen. He says Mike's like a brother. I'm so afraid for him." The last letter was dated 3 days before Reese's death. "It's over, Jenny. I can't do it anymore. I'm going to tell him tonight. I'm going to give him an ultimatum. It's me or Mike. It's a normal life or this darkness. I love him so much, but I can't watch him destroy himself. Pray for me." Carly sat in her home office, the printed out photographs spread before her on the desk, the words from the letters burning in her mind. The official story had always been a tragic accident. A slick road, a swerve to avoid a deer. But these letters painted a different picture. A picture of a desperate confrontation. A picture of a young woman who saw Mike Corbin not as a mentor, but as a corrupting, dangerous influence. A picture that, in the wrong hands, could be twisted to suggest that Sonny's world hadn't just led to Reese's death, but that he might have been directly, culpably involved. And Jennifer Smith. Reese's best friend. The one person who knew the truth of what Reese was planning to do that night. She hadn't just vanished. She had buried her old life, created a new identity, and bided her time for decades. And now she was here. In Port Charles. Not as Jennifer Smith, seeking closure, but as Justine Carson, the assistant district attorney, embedding herself into the very heart of Sonny's life. It wasn't about justice. It wasn't about the law. This was vengeance. A long, cold, meticulously planned revenge for the death of her best friend. She wasn't trying to put Sonny in prison for his crimes, she was trying to destroy him for a crime he didn't commit, but would forever blame himself for. The pieces clicked into place with a terrifying, final clarity. Carly felt a wave of nausea so powerful she had to grip the edge of the desk. This was worse than any rival mobster, any ambitious DA, any of the usual threats they faced. This was a ghost, armed with the law and a bottomless well of hatred, and she was standing right beside Sonny, whispering counsel in his ear, all while holding a dagger behind her back. She had to tell him. She had to tell him now. The thought of delivering this news, of dredging up that ancient, painful history, made her soul ache. But the alternative, leaving him vulnerable, leaving him trusting the woman who was plotting his annihilation, was unthinkable. She found him at the Metro Court pool, of all places. He was standing by the water, his back to her, dressed in a dark suit, his posture rigid as he stared out at the city skyline. Even in a moment of repose, Sonny Corinthos thrummed with a contained energy, a live wire of power and tension. He turned as she approached, and his expression, which had been pensive, softened slightly at the sight of her. It was that small, unguarded moment of affection that nearly broke her. "Carly. What's wrong?" he asked immediately, his eyes narrowing. He could always read her. "We need to talk," she said, her voice tighter than she intended. "Somewhere private. Now." He didn't argue. He led her up to his private penthouse office in the hotel, a space of sleek surfaces and intimidating views. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, didn't offer her one, and turned to face her, leaning against his desk. "All right. What is it? Is it one of the kids? Michael? Donna?" "It's about your lawyer," Carly said, forcing the words out. Sonny's face immediately clouded with impatience. "Carly, not this again. I don't have time for your suspicions about Justine. She's the only thing standing between me and a long stretch in a federal penitentiary. She's not who you think she is, Sonny." Carly's voice was low, urgent. She stepped forward, pulling the folded printouts from her purse. "Her name isn't Justine Carson. It's Jennifer Smith. The name meant nothing to him. He stared at her, blank and irritated. What are you talking about? She changed her identity, Sonny. She buried her past. And I found it. She thrust the photographs toward him. She's from Oak Haven. She went to college with Reese. She was her roommate. Her best friend. The name Reese landed in the quiet room like a physical blow. Sonny flinched, a barely perceptible tremor, but Carly saw it. The impatience in his eyes evaporated, replaced by a slow-dawning confusion and a deep, old pain. What? The word was a whisper. Look at the picture, Sonny. He took the papers, his movements slow, deliberate. He looked down at the photograph of the two young women, his gaze fixing on Reese's laughing face. A muscle in his jaw twitched. He stared at it for a long, long time, lost in a memory Carly could only imagine. When he finally dragged his eyes to the face of the other woman, to Jennifer, the confusion deepened. I don't understand, he said, his voice gravelly. Jenny? This is Jenny? What does this have to do with Justine? They're the same person, Sonny. Carly's frustration boiled over. Jennifer Smith is Justine Carson. She changed her name, she built a whole new life, and she came here. For you. The pieces weren't connecting for him. The shock of seeing Reese, of having that part of his past thrust so violently into the present, was short-circuiting his usually sharp instincts. Why? Why would she do that? Because of Reese! Carly exclaimed, grabbing the letters and shoving them into his hands. Read them, Sonny. Read what Reese wrote to her. She was going to leave you. She was going to give you an ultimatum because she was scared of Mike, scared of the life you were getting into. She told Jenny everything. And then she died. Sonny's eyes scanned the letters, his face growing paler with each word. Carly watched as the familiar words, I'm scared, he's using Sonny, it's me or Mike, sank in. She saw the weight of a decades-old guilt settle back onto his shoulders, a burden he had never truly shrugged off. She thinks it's your fault, Sonny, Carly said, her voice softening despite the urgency. Jennifer. Justine, she doesn't believe it was an accident. She thinks your world, your choices, your loyalty to Mike, got her best friend killed. And she's spent the last 20 years planning to make you pay for it. Finally, the dam broke. The confusion in Sonny's eyes evaporated, replaced by a dawning, horrific comprehension. He wasn't just seeing a helpful ADA anymore, he was seeing the vengeful ghost of his dead girlfriend's best friend. He saw the legal strategies in a new light, not as clever defenses, but as subtle manipulations, ways to keep him close, to control the narrative, to steer him toward a ruin of her design. Every piece of confidential information he had shared, every vulnerability he had revealed, every strategy they had discussed, it had all been fed to the enemy. The glass of whiskey in his hand shattered against the marble fireplace in a sudden, violent explosion of crystal and amber liquid. Carly jumped back, her heart leaping into her throat. Sonny! He wasn't listening. A tremor of pure, unadulterated rage began to course through him. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, his knuckles white. His breathing became ragged, his chest heaving. The pain on his face was raw, a brutal open wound, but it was quickly being consumed by an inferno of fury. All this time, he growled, the sound low and animalistic. She's been in my home. She's sat at my table. She's met my children. She's looked me in the eye and promised to protect me, he trailed off, a fresh wave of rage making him tremble. She knows everything. Every move I'm planning to make. Every weakness. She's been cataloging it all. He spun around, pacing the length of the office like a caged tiger. The air in the room crackled with his anger. It was a tangible force, suffocating and dangerous. I trusted her, he roared, the sound echoing off the high ceilings. He slammed a fist down on his desk, making the heavy wood shudder. I trusted her with my life. With my family's safety. And she's been playing me from the very first day. Carly watched him, her own fear and anger mingling with a fierce, protective satisfaction. She had been right. Her instincts, which he had so casually dismissed, had been right all along. But the victory felt hollow in the face of his volcanic rage. "What are you going to do?" she asked quietly. "What am I going to do?" he repeated, a cold, terrifying smile twisting his lips. It wasn't a smile of humor, but of pure, focused menace. "I'm going to have a conversation with the good ADA. I'm going to look her in the eye and I'm going to say her real name. I'm going to watch her face when she realizes the game is up." "Sonny, you can't just confront her," Carly pleaded, a new fear gripping her. "She's the district attorney. She has the full power of the law behind her. If you go in there guns blazing, she'll have you arrested before you finish your sentence." "Let her try," he snarled. "I'd like to see her try now that I know what she is. Now that I know this is all a personal vendetta. She's compromised. She's unfit. She can't touch me.